Hi everyone, this is your favorite film critic Jay or Jalan Salah as you formerly know her. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing director Ari Sellinger to talk about his latest film, On the End, but also about his career, filmography, the kind of cinema that he makes. Ari, just so happy to talk to you today.
Thank you, Jalen. Yes, absolutely. You said it right. Favorite film reviewer. I agree.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, thank you. I want to know, first of all, because you are in the world of music, you make music and you make films. How
Yeah.
did these worlds come together? Because you also make music for your films. So I want to
Yeah.
know how these worlds got together.
Ooh, what a great, juicy question. Well, I'll tell you, I've always loved music. I think I love music. I love it as much as film because it comes in through the ears and then enters into the soul, and you can just, it's a great way to kind of just, create. And to be honest with you, I made I went to school, film school in New York. I went to NYU, and you know, I told two stories that take 6 months to a year to tell, and I did do the music for them. And after I finished my thesis film out of school, I had this feeling of like I want to tell so many stories, I really do, but it takes a little while to really, you have to really commit to one story if you're going to tell it. And I remember, I'd always, when I was in high school, I always had trouble with lyrics. Like I was like, man, I want to tell these stories, but like the rhyming and all that stuff is hard. But when I was in school, like I one day just was like, oh, I think I can do this. I would sit in class. I would remember in linguistics class, I would be like, oh, I do love words. Let's write some stories. And you can just tell 13 stories in lyrics and songs. Could take you 5 minutes. And that was my kind of way of unloading all the stories I want to tell without needing to, you know, get my DP and producers of, I could just do it and be self-sufficient. Um, and to be honest with you, I'm honored to be called a musician because I have such admiration for musicians, but I don't know if I'd have the gall to call myself one because I really, I always considered it like, in Space Jam when you see Michael Jordan playing baseball, you're like, ooh, cool. And I'm glad you're enjoying that, but go back.
Exactly. Go back up to basketball.
Yeah, and I think even my parents who helped pay for my education were like, Go back, come on, we you got that degree. We didn't pay for you didn't go to Berkeley, and we don't have a musician for a son. We're already risking it on an artist of a filmmaker." And then finally, after I got that out of my system, I did an album with a guy named Rob Fraboni who had recorded with Bob Dylan in the band, and it was great. But as soon as I finished that, I was like, all right, it's time to make a movie. And I started writing some scripts, and then I finally landed on this one about Tom, a mechanic in Montauk. And it goes back into that whole, it takes a long time to get a movie told and done. But he was a friend of mine. So there was this covenant between the two of us where even if I got a little bored of the story, it didn't matter. He was always going to be my friend, you know? And that kind of, gave me the impetus to, you're not going to give up on this, you're going to look for the money. You're going to, yeah. So it went to that whole, once you tell a story, it better mean a hell of a lot to you, because it's hard work. So yeah, anyways,
So true.
music. Yeah.
So true. So true. I just love that you described to me the music. And I think you found a way to become a semi-musician by making the music for all your films because you made short films and this is your first feature, right?
Yes, yes.
But I feel like at least you're accomplishing that through creating the musical world for your films.
I should say, as much as I want to keep getting absorbing all the you're a musician. My brother did the score for this one. I played a little guitar. I played a little
Okay,
guitar.
but
It
it's
is true.
beautiful.
I played a little guitar, but my brother, he's younger than me. This was his first film too, and I was like, "This is it, man. You better like you know me better than anybody. You know what I listen to. You know the films I make. I mean, he's watched me make films for a long time, and I basically said, "This is your chance. Do it." And he's a young kid. He's 20. He just turned 28, and it was a big job. there's some orchestra compositions, but he really kind of knew what I was going for. This kind of George Harrison, you know, cerebral, uh, guitar based thing that was really important to me because, it's a gritty story about a guy covered in grease, but I wanted you to feel that there's spirituality to it. And I think when you can hear the fingers on the strings, which is what Eitan did, that was really important because I wanted you to feel the humanity, and he just knocked it out of the park. I just played a little electric guitar, which was the fill that I needed.
And I love those parts so much. So kudos to you
Thank
and to
you.
your amazing brother.
Yeah, Eitan, great guy. You'll hear more of him, I'm sure. He's really doing great stuff. But yes.
I want to talk about your shorts, about yourself as a filmmaker, but let me start by saying I love that you actually talk about real people in your films, the working class, people who I feel like now I think the gap between, like the upper class and the working class, the middle class is kind of decaying all over the world. So we need to talk about people who had homes and wake up one day and they're getting in the way of the rich enjoying the ocean, which is supposed to be for everyone, for you and me, and everyone else, even someone like Tom. And yet, even having that house has become something big and insurmountable and kind of like standing in the way of better people to enjoy.
You're
So
right.
this is something that kind of made me frustrated because I'm very passionate about those things, but also
Get
made
it.
me realize why were you passionate yourself about this topic, about this idea?
I don't want to be like self-righteous and be like, I've always noticed this. I just because I learned it, you spend time in the world, and Tom was always one of the real ones, and he wasn't never perfect. He was never perfect, but you know, it's there's such I'll just give you I went to get a coffee this morning. I can make coffee here, but I love the little walk because I walk past this mechanic named Joey, and he has a little board up on the wall that he writes every morning. And it said, I'm Jewish, obviously, but it said something like, you wear a cross, but do you live it? And it said Matthew 16:24. And I was like, I don't know, it's Matthew 16:24. And it was basically saying, I see all you people wearing crosses, but do you have it in your heart? And I stopped him afterwards. I was like, were you thinking about that in the car ride over? And I talked to him for about 30 minutes. I was even a little worried because I was like, I'm going to be late to talk to Jalen. And he just gave me this whole thing of like, I've never had such a real conversation just about life and about you want to talk to God, you just got to look up. You don't need to know who you were born to, your roots. And this was something that Tom would talk to me about all the time. He would call me rabbi, you know. Probably just because I don't have it right now, but I sometimes have a bushy beard. Every time we talk, he let me use his backyard when everybody I was 20 years old. That's how I met him. I shot my short film, Deuce and a Quarter, in his backyard. I was driving around looking to shoot my first film in Montauk. I went up to Albany, went everywhere. And everybody kept saying, what do you mean you want to shoot in my space? We needed an auto mechanic shop. No one would let us shoot there. And then we saw Tom. I was with my friend Danny, and we pulled over. He's fixing a car. His butt crack was out. And he said to me, yeah, shoot in my backyard. And that's the type of humanity that you don't get from a corporation, or uh, you don't get it from just somebody with credentials. It's just it's the real people that really do that and exhibit love in that way. And this was back in 2011. We stayed friends. Unusual friend to have. He was a lot older than me. And throughout the years, he used to tell me, you got to tell my story. I have this big thing going with the town. They're screwing. And there was a mixture of me being, I don't want to get in trouble, man. And a little bit of, is this over my head lie? And I just, like, I just knew there was something really true. And I fell in love with his love for his girlfriend, Freckles. You know, that was, anyways, I'm going on a tangent. I was just really taken with talking to this mechanic just now, Joey. It was, but that's where you find the real, that's where the humanity lies. It's not, I don't know. You're always looking for some story, and everybody's got one, but I like that it reflected other stories. Anyways,
I wanted to ask you
yeah,
because you just mentioned Freckles and Tom, and you were an observer of the blossoming of this relationship, but you're also observing how, like it took a turn. Of course, I will tell a spoiler warning because I don't want to get spoiled because I personally, I didn't expect what happened. So, because you are the observer, you saw this relationship blossom and maybe get stronger. But then you saw something, of course, I will put a spoiler warning because it hit me like, I don't think I expected things like that to happen. I didn't expect the impact of the tragedy, but you saw
yeah.
it all, you lived it all. And yet you translated that to the screen beautifully with the amazing actors who worked with you. How was that? Like, first of all, how was it like to live a love story and then try as much as possible artistically to capture it on screen?
It was one of the great learning adventures of my life, and also really filled my heart with a lot of contentment to be able to do that. I learned a lot about storytelling, trying to take people that I knew and put them into characters. I'll tell you, I lived it, but I remember the smell the most. When I would step into that house, the thick smell of smoke and all that junk. I just remember I can put myself back in those shoes from 6, 7 years ago, and just remember the smell of Tom's house and all that stuff, and just sitting there with Freckles. I remember one time I was with her actually, and we were having a nice conversation, and she was talking about how silly Tom was, and all of a sudden she had blood. She had like a tube in her arm, and the tube came loose, and just blood started spraying everywhere. And it was just like I think I had this feeling of like, what an honor to have a conversation with someone that's struggling to just sit here talk to me, you know. And she was such a great person, and he came out and basically fixed her up. He really was kind of her superhero towards the end. But it's funny. I never realized, now I think back on it, and it's like telling story. It's like telling ghost stories. All these people that you were sitting in a room with without giving things away. It's just like you feel like a custodian of a story, as opposed to I just sprang out of my head. Obviously, it was important to me to telescope the moments that were meaningful. Um, but it feels heavy. I know I wasn't telling the story of JFK or Gandhi or anything like that, but something about it just being people that and you knowing that you can tell that story felt very special. So it was really fun to not dramatize them or exploit them, but bring out the humanity and make them feel like them just like I do. And it's a kind of a magical feeling to be talking about Tom and Freckles. Them as well as I do. It's cool because I remember when I would see them, I would think this is such a personal experience for me. I don't think anybody ever is going to know what it's like to be sitting and smelling this room and be sharing that as kind of random inexperience as it felt at the time. It gives me a lot of confidence in communication and telling stories.
But as much as you could, you were able to give me that scent because I was going to tell you that this movie sometimes stink. I could tell,
I
I
know.
could imagine because the details I feel like were so good. Like, how was the department, like the production department? Like, how was the production
Oh
design
my God,
department
yeah.
there? I want to know everything because it felt like I could be inside their house, smell, see the decay of some of the items, the junk. So I wanted to know, how did you accomplish that?
I could tell you. First of all, I had a great production designer named Anna Kathleen, who I met, and we started talking about music first. I think she thought I gave the job away to somebody else, so we had this wonderful conversation about music. It was very low stakes, but I loved it so much, and I brought her on board, and she basically, I didn't, she knew it from the script. She just knew what I was looking for to kind of create this beautiful. if hideous, tapestry of mess and disorganization. And what she did was she hired a great team, Kendra, Angela, Fiona, Zeno, all these great people. And what they did was we really got a lucky break in that we shot on the same street that the actual story happened on. And Tom's house was 3 houses down from the house that we shot at. And I'm pretty sure she just took the most handsome pieces of his junk and just got a tow truck and dragged it a couple houses down and just designed it with his actual junk and made it look like that. And yeah, it was a real balancing act. We didn't have this crazy budget. We were really scrappy, and she, I have people coming up to me being like, I don't know how much you made that for, but whatever you told me, I'd believe. And it's really a credit to her. She knew. A lot of people said to me, I don't know how we're going to do this. And I liked her because she never said that to me. She never said, I don't know how we're going to do this. She just knew how to do it.
She
She
just
was a
did. She just
real woman.
worked. This is a
Yeah.
real artist. I feel like this is whenever, because I interviewed a lot of custom designers and they would always tell me like how to do it on the spot, like what to do on the job itself
Yeah.
rather than being learning and going to school and stuff like that. So she kind of like gave you that practicality, which is a blessing.
She's from the foothills of Colorado, and I could hear it when we played guitar together. I was like, she's gonna get it. She's got the true grit that you need to tell a story like this. Goes back to what you're saying, like just being able to communicate. You need like an army of empaths, you know. My costume designer who you just mentioned, Stacy, she gave her dad's suit was something that Tim wore, and I was like, that's good. That's good. Memories of your father are in the story now. And I think you can feel that you can feel the truth. Different story, but you can wear it.
100%. Okay, because you mentioned the beautiful expression, it's like telling ghost stories. I feel
Yeah.
like you are grieving yourself. The idea of, because it's mind blowing. Again, spoiler warning, I will put. But the idea that you can be talking to people and having them around you, but these people no longer exist in the realm of your universe. And you actually spent years with
I know.
those people. And when you are retrieving your memories about making a movie about those people are no longer around. So it's like, yes, you are telling a story that will always be in the present because people will watch the movie in the present, but to you, it will be like a past story. How does that feel? And how do you go through emotions like that? Because it's very complex.
It is very complex. I think it's amazing to make someone eternal, especially someone who you'd never think in a million years not deserves. I think everybody has a story. I really believe that. I think you can really do it, but it takes
Me
a
too.
lot of, I really believe that. And it takes a lot of patience. Um, but he lived in an area that already felt like kind of a depot for the spirits. He lived on the beach, you know, and you would just look at his house and see that this is a complicated person that lives here. I went there yesterday, actually, after we had a premiere. I went to where he lived just to kind of absorb it all.
God, Ari.
And, it was funny. I was on the beach with my producer Raven and my wife Allie, who painted the poster that I'm sitting by. She's the real artist, and this person was driving down the beach and almost ran me over, and basically, and I got him and said, "Oh," she said, "Thank you for moving. By the way," and she pointed at Tom's actual house, said, "Do you know anything about that house?" And I basically just said, "What? Park your car." you know, I know so much about this house. And I just had this moment of like, I know a lot about this house. I know more about this house than my grandfather's, trek from Greece to the promised land and to New York. I know so much about this house that I'm just glad that I had a bucket to pour it into and just fill it with all these feelings of things that I've gone through over the years. Like each year I could tell you another thing I learned about Tom, another flip side of the coin, another heartbreak. Um, and that place was just primed for a story that deserved a stage, even though they say don't judge a book by its cover, but and you really can't, I mean, people were telling me about the movie, like, I don't know how you got me to like Tom, but by the end I loved him, you know?
Same
And
here.
and that was a challenge. That was a fun challenge. I even Tom's first thing that he said to me is like, everybody on the street hates me. And I was like, and I remember thinking, all right, we're gonna make Shrek. We're gonna make Shrek, You're gonna fall in love with him by the end. But that's really a credit to his capacity for loving Freckles. People are so much more attractive when you see that they're wrapped up in love. Their best qualities come out. And when I first experienced him and Freckles were quite an item. They were not like they weren't like uh, uh, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, or I don't even know if I'm going to say somebody who's still a couple, but like Brad and Jen, or it wasn't that, it was quite the opposite. And I loved that about it. I thought it was so, you're loving someone through their dirtiest outfit, you know? Yeah, I loved that. Yeah, yeah.
But these people were real in your life. And like, because I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I write poetry, the idea of having your characters or the people you are building the world on become actors, become fictionalized, how difficult or easy was the casting process? And did you know right away, or did you go through choices until you had, like
Oh,
our two amazing leads?
yeah, Tim Blake Nelson and Murray Enos. By the way, you're a poet? I'd love to
Yeah,
read
I
some of
am
your.
a poet. Yes,
Oh,
I have to send you my poetry. Yes.
please do. I would love to. I'm feeling very much like just wanting to absorb things. Listen, when you're around great work and great people that make great work, all you want to do is foster it. With Tim, it took a really long time to find the actors. I mean, um, I kept looking for people that, in my mind, and this was part of a learning process for me because it's a true story. I kept looking for people that like vaguely looked like Tom, you know, bald head, walrus mustache. So Tim, I met with this actor Bill Camp, who to me I thought, oh, he'd be a great Tom. He couldn't do it. But he said, well, why not Tim Blake Nelson? And I thought, and I'll be honest with you, I thought, nah, Tim is thin and has a whole lot of hair. It's not
Exactly.
Tom, not Tom. But then another person named Nikki, who I met, and she said, you should talk to Tim. I know somebody that knows him, this guy Will. And I talked to Tim, and Tim is just he's a brilliant guy and a brilliant writer. And he told me the first thing he said, listen, we're going to have a come to Jesus moment. If you can commit that you're going to tell this story about Tom and Freckles and not get sidetracked by anything, then I'm in. Um, and he also said, to his credit, I'm going to do great. Hopefully you like my performance and what I do. He stayed with Tom. He lived in Tom's house for a night. And, he really committed to it. But he did say to me, whoever plays Freckles, this is her movie. And I'm just going to be there to support her. And those are the actors and that I love. Ones who are like, I'm just a team player here, And by the way, I think he's incredible. So it was kind of funny for him to say that, but I got what he meant. And so
Yes.
when we looked for Freckles, we just looked for who can Tim prop up and really make, because I think Freckles, God bless our entire cast, but I think Freckles is the centerpiece of it all. When she comes into the movie, you feel her, you feel the arc open,
Exactly.
um, and you feel the rainbow just fly in. And once we had Tim, I had the confidence that he believed in that. We thought the same thing. He started going to his friends that he's been in the industry for a long time. He went to Lois Smith, who's 95, and she just said yes immediately. Her manager just said to me, treat her like the queen that she is. And I said, yeah, I will. And that was Tim. And then we got Murray, and they met in LA, and I think they were both like, this Ari guy, hopefully he doesn't screw it up, but we'll do it for him. And they just kind of started flying in. But working with them, all I wanted to do was just make it so that they could, they're directors themselves. They could tell the story without me. I just needed to give them, it's like your wedding. You know what I mean? It all comes from the top down. The wedding will be good if the bride and groom are kind of emanating the beauty and love for each other. And that was kind of just my approach to it. Just like, if I kind of just let it flow for me, people will kind of gravitate towards that and just do their thing. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, it felt like a documentary at times, because they were just so there in the moment, and the whole crew kind of just let it happen, let them be vulnerable. And it was, yeah, it's like easy.
You brought my favorite word in the world, vulnerability. Because I
Mhm.
feel sometimes it amazes me and surprises me how actors can be so vulnerable on screen. And
Yeah,
what the director does to protect, like those actors, but also lets them go, like at their most weakest, most vulnerable moments. Because there are many scenes where you could tell, wow, I can't believe the acting here because it's so vulnerable and so broken and so beautiful. And there are many intimate scenes where it's just as awkward as real life. There's nothing that feels choreographed or feels, like movie land magical. It felt very real and very raw and sometimes very painful to watch, but this is reality. So how can you as a director get that out of them and get them to be free feeling, like very comfortable being their most vulnerable selves?
how did this as a poet, poets, I feel like often need to go to an island, and be alone and be with their thoughts. And you want people to bring out the poetry in their work, and so you just have
Yeah.
to protect them so that they feel that they can do that. And I just tried to allow Tim and Murray and the whole cast really to bring out the poetry of the character that they were um you know exhibiting. And I think a lot of that just came from, we shot in Montauk, the end of the world. It was so key that we shot there first, because we did shoot a little in Brooklyn. We shot some of the interiors in Brooklyn without, I don't want to shed the veneer, but we did. But shooting in Montauk, it feels like another planet out there. You know, it feels like you're on this stage and you've got the heavens just like cue the sun, like Truman Show. You just feel alone and with the world. And I thought that was pretty key in setting the stage for people to really let out these naturalistic performances. Um, and I did my best to facilitate that, but I think the wind and the waves and the way the moon comes out and lights everything, just everybody was swept up in that. Um, and then we came to New York and that was shattered, but I think it seeped into everybody's DNA by that point. We did 15 days or so out there, and I think after that we were off to the races, and it was just kind of maintaining that truth that we had set in Montauk was really key. Yeah.
Okay, because you were talking about poetry, and I love
Hmm.
the idea that artistic process kind of like differs because this is what I would like to ask you as a musician, because as a poet, I rarely protect myself. I feel like I'm a very savage poet. I love putting myself out there in the rain, in the fears, like in the dark castle, and then returning probably inside myself where it's like the safest place ever, kind of like swallowing and digesting what I've
Yeah,
just
like
did or went through because I'm such a mad, ravenous poet, and then putting it down on paper. And then when I read it, I realize, oh, whoa, really? Did you feel that? And it's mostly, I think, rather than the experience, it's the feeling itself, the scary feeling that people mostly non-artists protect themselves from. I go for it head first, don't care. Do you, as a musician, protect yourself or stay within, like a protected space, or do you just go wildly because you just want to create, even as a director? Because it always surprises me. I even sometimes when I interview actors, some of them tell me, like, yes, I know how to protect my inner self, and some of them are like, I don't. I just go and hurt myself, and I'm like, okay, wow. So what is your process, Ari?
well, just with what you're saying, it reminds me of when I learned how to like solo on guitar.
Yeah.
You have like these chords, you have C, G, D, or whatever. And I used to, when I first started, before I really was good or what I considered sufficient for writing lyrics, I would just I would play it to GarageBand on my nylon acoustic. And then and I had actually broken my leg back in 11th grade, and I was out for tennis season, and I was stuck up in my attic, and I learned how to solo, and I just would record the chords, and then I'd be like, all right, let's see what's going to come out of me now. And you just start with the pentatonic and then you start expanding and you're like, well, what now I can slide up to the 12th fret and it's all improv. And that's kind of what I tried to take to this movie, especially because it was a true story. Because, you know, I didn't want to set the pieces too hard and fast because I wanted to explore it as I was there. I don't want to shoot, you know, shoot from the hip, but you kind of set the pieces and then they're going to fall where they fall. The actors are going to walk this way, and I'm going to have to tell Connor, my DP, all right, he went over there, so we can't get that angle behind. It won't work. So let's quickly reevaluate. And that was something that that was new to me. You do the scene, you have about 15 minutes to do all the shots up again because they go where they're going to go, and you don't really have time to course correct. You're soloing. You get what you need to get, and I love that about filmmaking. It's what makes shooting so divine because that's what you're gonna live with. I mean, you can whatever you can. They say you can fix it in post. Some things you can't. Some things are happen there in the moment, in the present, and that's where the goods are. Don't live warts and all. You got to roll with it. I love that.
So was there a scene that surprised you as a director? Like you went there prepared, knowing exactly what you will do, and then something happened, maybe something in nature, maybe something with the actors, maybe something through, although you had, I don't know if you had rehearsals or not, but an unexpected reaction that you thought even elevated the game. What surprised you?
There were a lot of surprises, but one in particular stands out that was weather related, or just felt we had this scene. It's after the raid scene, and I had all the actors. It was one of the few scenes where I had a lot of the actors, Glenn, to have all the actors there, and they were all out there on the beach in Montauk. And I had a couple shots, and all of a sudden the wind started picking up. It was like a hurricane force wind. Um, and we had this one shot where there are two people sitting on a stoop, and there's a guy in the background. A cop enters the scene. We had a whole, I think, 5 shots to do it, but the wind was picking up so heavy, and you could just see the telephone. You could see the telephone lines just swinging, and you could see her hair just like going crazy. The wind was insane. It was almost spooky. I was almost like, and at one point, a C stand snapped. It was scary. It was dangerous. But we got the take, and it was one take. We only got that one take. Then we had to shut production down. And I thought to myself, well, that was weird. I don't think I've ever. These C stands are heavy duty. They're not supposed to snap. Um, but when I watched that scene now, I'm just like, whoa, like look at this. Like you can feel the weight of the world literally brushing past them. And they're reacting to it too. They're speaking a little louder, they're carrying themselves differently. And we only got one take. And that's the one I had to use. So, and I just remember being like, uh it's a documentary. This is a documentary. I know I have a script and I know they're acting, but how can you rehearse for that? And we have no other option. And it's my favorite scene in the movie because you just see them reacting to that moment, and it shook me up too. It was certainly like I'm glad nobody got hurt, but you know we have it on film now, so yeah, that was a surprise.
This is the magic of cinema, I feel like. This is the magic of making movies.
There's really it's a blessing. It was the most fun I've ever had, and everybody I love was there. Tom was there, and yeah, I don't think I want to do anything else.
Okay, but what is the most difficult scene that maybe to me, like to me, maybe the most difficult would be one of the emotional scenes or the raid scene or some of the courtroom scenes. But for you, something that maybe for me, the average viewer, I wouldn't realize, well, wait, this was difficult. But for you, it was like, okay, disaster. When it's like cut, poof, thank you, God. It's over.
Yeah, I will say the courtroom was scary because it was just a lot of extras and they're all looking at you.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
just,
I
but
felt it. Yes.
you know, there was this one, I'm trying to think what was really, really, what was tough? We had this one scene where she has this diabetic attack,
Yes.
and they're like the Tim and Murray are like throwing each other across the room,
This
and
was intense.
yeah, just it was intense, and it wasn't that big a room, and there's all this junk, and but we had a guy that kind of was like a stunt coordinator there, and I just remember we had so many shots because it was just specific details of he needs to grab this, and we didn't shoot any more than we needed to, and it was just tough because it was like, what hopefully nobody breaks their neck. No one did because we had a great crew, but me personally, I was like, are they going to know how to do that? It involves a lot of hand-eye coordination, but they were such pros of actors. And then afterwards, they were like telling me, Connor and Tess, my assistant director, they were like, "Bravo to us." And I was thinking to myself, "Yeah, we got away with that. We got away with that." But it was a physical performance. But they really got to know each other. Tim and Murray were like, it was like they were meant to work together. I don't know. They just understood. They're just such professionals. And I've made movies with my friends. When you see real actors act in person, it is unlike anything ever else. When you see great actors doing a scene together in person, just a couple feet away, you're like, this is weird. This is so weird. It's electric, and great ones like that. It's you just don't want to screw up yourself. Yeah. My sound guy told me that, and I was like, "You're right. Seeing real actors act, that's crazy."
Profound
Yeah, that
moment.
was a tough scene, though. Yeah.
It's and I can imagine why. Seriously, it makes total sense that it was a tough scene. But Maria, because the real Freckles, when you see her, she's okay. I saw the end. Of course, for me, it was like, wait a minute, this is Tom and Freckles. I can't believe it. What a brilliant casting, because you deviated from the similarities physically and you went for the soul of the
Yeah.
characters that you know, which I think is more brilliant. But when you see the real Freckles, of course, we have the movie Freckles. How did you feel when you cast Maria?
Mm.
Because she has this beauty, which seriously, the first scene we ever see her on screen, it's as if our hearts, not just Tom's, seriously kind of like, wow, I feel like my heart was kind of like being fluffed, being beating so fast, because I couldn't expect
Yeah.
the beautiful surprise ripped open to receive her and to receive the beauty of her and the energy that she brings to the scene. So how was it like in your mind? Did you know, like, I need to get, like a physicality, a particular physicality, where you're just looking for a performance that made sense to you? Because you said that you asked Tim and Tim got people that he knew and stuff like that. So I want to know, what were you looking for? Because real life us, maybe we need like mega characters, mega personalities of us on screen. So I wanted to know your perspective as the creator.
Well, it's a great question, but I will say I felt that for a character named Freckles, this person's going to need freckles. That was, and it made it a
Yes.
little bit, it made it a little easier and a little bit harder at the same time. Did you ever play that game? I think it's called Guess Who, where it's like, does your character have glasses? And
Yes.
then you just like put down all like, it was kind of like that. I was like, it was like, then you get, does your character have freckles? And then you put all the pieces down. And you're like, oh, okay, so it's only like one of these two people. But with Murray, I just, I'd seen her. I remember when I was in school, I used to, these buses would come down, and that show The Killing was on, and she was always on the front of it. And I just thought her look, really, for her, it was a look. I just thought her look was so striking. We don't have that many red-haired actresses with these really, noticeable freckles, and she just had this like gaze to her. And then I saw her in a movie called Devil's Knot by Atom Egoyan, in which she played like a really kind of a character somewhat similar to Freckles, very just salt of the earth. And I remember I saw that and I was like, keep that in mind. And when it kind of came time to casting, I just she kept she was like on my first list. And when I sent it to her, her energy, she was just a radiant personality. She was so ready to go for it. She lives in LA. She was the only actor who didn't live in New York. I got a bunch of great New York theater actors, which she was, but she lives in LA. and she flew in one weekend just to walk around Sheepshead Bay, where my bubby actually lives, which was really fun because I know the area well. But Freckles was from there, and we just went to a couple coffee shops to just hear the way people spoke. And I just remember thinking, this is so obviously the actress. This is her because she's gonna go for it. She was ready to really just open up and do it all. And she knew that she could have some fun and really kind of reveal herself. And yeah, when I met her, I was kind of like, we're good to go. We're good to go.
Definitely, I feel like there are many moments casting, like shooting. It's like when you know, because I feel like this is a very instinctive film. Like your instinct worked a lot
Yeah,
in this film, and probably this is why
totally.
I could feel it. Like I really feel it, and it translates to the screen. Like this makes sense now when you talk to the creator behind something that you really loved. It sometimes makes sense. Like yes, this is why I felt this here. This is why I felt this here. This is why it made sense here. So your conversation opened up the world of the movie even further for me. So now I get it. Like why did I feel this here? Why did I feel like, ooh, probably this is why his choice was like that
Good.
here? Because I always play it like a puzzle in my head.
You, I if I don't know who this is a director, and I wish I knew who said it, but it's like if you think you can direct a movie and hide yourself, you're stupid. You can't hide when you're making a movie. You know, it's all right there. And if you think it's not going to be autobiographical or your choices don't feel intentional, you're wrong. Um, and it's great to kind of hear that it's true, like that everything that you do, all the little things that they do matter. And that's why I love film, right? That's what art's all about. You put literally everything you can, and then the accidents somehow they were meant to be as well, you know?
Yeah,
So I'm glad to hear
100%.
that. I'm glad that that there's this kind of symbiosis. Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
100%. So, what is next for Ari? I want to know. I know you are immersed
Ooh,
still in the world of this film. I can feel it. You're still being pulled, like by the ebb and tide of the ocean. But what is next? Because you have to, because you owe it to yourself and to people who really like your art to go on another adventure, even if not immediately. But I want to know what's on your mind.
have I I have three scripts right now that I want to make. They're all very different, and there have been a lot of new life developments for me in the past year. Me and my wife are going to have a little baby, and so
Congratulations.
thank you. And yeah, I have like a little. We got this for the little baby, like a little
Oh,
toy inside.
this is so cute.
And that made me want to write a different one. Made me want to go back to music and talk about. I've been always wanting to make a movie that takes place at a radio station, and that's the one I'm working on right now because it's the most playful and a little zany. But then I've got one set in the '60s in Mississippi that I've always wanted to explore, and then I've got one set in France. So we'll see. We'll see which one takes. But with the kid on the way, I'm thinking I'm gonna go fun. I'm
The
gonna
radio
go
station one first.
musical and try to revisit. I think so. I think so. We'll see what people want to see, but that one feels like me right now, just playful and revisiting things that I liked when I was 7. You know,
That would be
yeah,
amazing.
that's
Oh
what
my
I
God, I
want to do.
can't wait to watch this film. Please finish it soon, Ari, because I really want to watch it. Yes.
Yeah, it's a roots film, returning to the roots. I can't wait to make it. I mean, all you want to do when you finish one movie is make another, and yeah, that's not changed.
That's perfect. Well, Ari, I feel elevated. I feel like I'm floating on cloud nine because this
Me
conversation was
too.
just enriching to me. Thank you for your time and for sharing your magic in creating this film with me.
Thank you. This was one of the best conversations I've had in such a long time. And, it's like so fortunate that you get to meet people just by running into a mechanic on the side of the street 12 years ago. So, you know, if I had told Tom I was going to be talking to you, Jalen, he would have been like, "Yeah, that's good." That's what he would be saying. That's good. I'm glad you deserve it.
Thank you, Tom. Like wherever you are in the
Anyways,
universe
yes,
now
thank you.
floating,
Thanks for having
thank
me.
you for bringing us together to have this
Thanks, Tom.
conversation. Exactly. Thank you, Ari. I
I
feel
know. God bless.
very happy.